So I'm going to start to put in some really, really dark areas that will help to develop the form. And you need to be a little careful and do it very, very little. We will also add some line definition. So most of the line is probably going to be on the shadow side of the petal. And so I'm going to put some disappearing line, and you want to hold the brush pretty vertically and change the pressure on the brush as you go along so that your line is not just an outline, a definition of the shadow edge of the flower. And you can go back in here if you need to. Once it's wet, you can kind of drop in a little bit more color and it'll spread on that line. So that's kind of the way you want to do this. Let's do some of this on our painting here. So this particular petal comes down in here. And there's a fairly dark area right in here. Notice that my brush is very vertical so that I'm just using the tip of that brush to create this line. And it disappears and reappears again. And this one has a quite strong color on this side. And we can always add more value to our shadow once we know what we're doing with these contour lines. I guess quite dark in here, but this area here wants to be a little greener, so I'm going to add just a little green to my my shadow in this area, just to make it a little bit more interesting. And then here underneath this petal there's some green showing. Now these brats are going to require a lot more value and really make the pockets where things kind of go in and hide from the light. Make those quite dark. It will really help with the with defining the structure of this specimen. Since my brush is fairly dry right now, I'm going to use some of this shadow color to further define some of these shapes. So you can see how this is starting to come together. Just with a little bit of line work, as long as the lines do not outline. And by putting in some of these lines now, we can better tell where we need to add more shadow. So the next thing I'm going to do before I go too much farther is I'm going to add some more color to this center section here, so that we have some definition. And it has a little bit of a texture to it, and normally I would say this should be following the Fibonacci pattern, but this is such a small area that it's almost impossible to do that. So we're continuing to add edges, making sure that we don't overdo them. And the darks are only in the very sparest areas where the petal actually goes down deep into a space where there is absolutely no light. So this is very important in the observation of this painting. And you can put different degrees of grayness for the line so that everything doesn't become an outline. And this is the kind of thing that you do with almost every single one of these white flowers. It's the shadow that helps to define the form. And we'll keep painting until we're done. At this point, I'm working pretty dry and looking at all these dark pockets that need definition. So I'm going to put another layer of paint over this whole leaf here, just to unify it a little bit more, tone down the values of the veins, and tie that whole section together. So there you have it, a white flower.